Hello and welcome to another episode of Heal and Shift. I'm your host, and this is a podcast which is all about getting behind the thinking of thought leaders, of even business people, of caretakers, of teachers, of humanitarians. Of those who have really managed to go beyond the kind of egoic tendencies, connect with greater awareness into a space where they're able to work for humanity and also for the planet. So today I'm delighted to introduce Nick Williams. For those of you who are not familiar with Nick's work, Nick is a formerly worked for the IT industry, and now he guides people in leadership who have achieved heights few think are possible, to help them find out really what's next. And his coaching and leadership programs help individuals understand what I consider their God-given purpose to better serve others. But today, we're here to understand about Nick's mindset. And Nick, now, when I first met you, thank you for joining today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm honoured. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Nick, when I first met you in London all those years ago, I got a real sense of someone who had a very peaceful mind, and really a very truly caring spirit. And I've seen you speak a number of times. So when I've seen you speak, I don't just see you as what some would say, a spiritual seeker, but someone who has tapped into something quite deep within that you would like others to understand. So this naturally leads you, I guess, to being very interested in people at thresholds. But tell me, tell me about the last threshold you experienced.
Well, I'm in one at the moment, I think, really. Obviously the pandemic has been challenging for all of us, but in the last year I've been ill a couple of times. Sadly, my mum has passed away. And I've had to deal with end of life. So now she died and the estate's tied up. I'm in a whole new chapter of my life. So I feel like I'm laying down a burden of responsibility that I've been carrying for the last 10 years. And part of me is going, so what next for me? So I've got a good friend in America who says sometimes I'm so desperate I have to follow my own advice. And I feel a bit like that myself at the moment. It's like, well, if I was coaching me, what would I be saying to me? And I'd be saying, well, just trust that there is a new chapter waiting to unfold for you. And I kind of know what it is, but there's a lot of letting go. And I think that's the bit that is often the difficult bit at thresholds, is the grieving and the letting go, so that the new can happen. Like every winter we have to grieve and let go in a way, and then the spring comes. And I feel like I'm having a new springtime at the moment, but I've had to go through a bit of a winter time to get here.
And do you, I teach Ayurveda, meditation, we part of the grieving process, we've got a whole toolkit. Are there, what does, how do you process that? Is it, do you look at it as a sense of time, or, are there techniques, are there tools that support you?
I've been doing men's work for over 3 decades now. So every week I go and we call it circle up. I circle up with other men, and I think especially older men rather than kind of younger men, but older men just sitting together and providing a safe space for us all to have whatever emotions we're having, whether that's joy, whether that's fear, whether that's grief, whatever it is. So yeah, that helps a lot. And I read a great book just as my mum died last year, it's called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And it's how, in a way, we just don't know how to grieve culturally, that we've forgotten the importance of grieving. And uncomfortable as it's been, I've just allowed myself to keep going through waves of grief. but also I'm happier some of the time and joyful. But then there's another wave of grief, and I'm now 63, and I'm into a new phase of my life. You know, what's my life about at age 63 as opposed to what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So yeah, you know, thresholds. I think they're so important, and yet I think they're often so misunderstood. And my understanding is many other societies have had kind of rituals for those thresholds as well. And again, culturally, we don't have threshold. We don't have those rituals. You know, I was quite touched last week, you know, when we were talking about having, you know, a kind of a week of mourning for the Duke of Edinburgh. But part of me went, I think we need a week of mourning for all of us for what we've been through in the last year. You know, I think we're all carrying sadness. We're all carrying a sense of loss, whether that's people, whether that's health, whether it's freedom, whether it's jobs, money. You know, we've all lost a lot in the last year. And, you know, why can't we acknowledge that a bit more? What a painful year it's been for most of us.
Yeah, for all of us. I agree. And actually, you know, the couple of things I wanted to just touch on there is, you know, this idea of, yes, in the West, we kind of, you know, we do brush things under the carpet. You know, in the East, if I look at my, you know, my family in India, you know, if there's a passing, you know, it's celebrated, and the life is celebrated, and you know, there are you know, rituals, and it's a very different kind of atmosphere, whereas here we have to kind of like almost, you know, it's happened, and we're meant to just sort of carry on as it will.
Yeah, aren't you over it yet? You know.
Yeah, exactly. Aren't you over it yet? And you know, and also, you know, as you say, I mean, with you know, with Prince Philip having died, you know, also I thought about the Queen. You know, I thought, you know, does she have any girlfriends, you know, that are supporting her through this process? And you know, is she able to show her feelings? And then if we extend that, absolutely, we've all been through a year of grief. And you know, so what have you learned, Nick, through this process?
I think what's really come home to me in the last year is I love the idea of renewal, that there's always the possibility of renewal, but I don't think it had really dawned on me to this level that there has to be letting go to be renewal, whether that's letting go of people, whether it's letting go of ideas or concepts, you know, ideas about who we are and how we see ourselves. But there's got to be the letting go in order to have the renewal. And I think that's what I've learned is that, you know, I did a little video on it myself a couple of months ago. I think I said, you know, I think grieving is actually a leadership quality. Unless you know how to grieve and let go, you can't have renewal. And if you don't go through your own grieving process, how can you have empathy for other people and their suffering? So I think there's something about grief that's really important to understand the suffering that many people are carrying, that unless we've been through our own suffering, we just have no idea what they're going through. You know, and I like the expression, you know, we've got no idea what other people are up against in themselves. You know, a lot of people are just holding it together and just scrape beneath the surface, and they're barely holding it together. But if we don't understand that because we don't know our own feelings, we're just going to judge them rather than have empathy and compassion for them and be willing and able to support. So something about renewal and needing the letting go process, and that when we're willing to let go, then we can have a new beginning.
So, you know, just now listening to you, we have something core in common. So for many years, you know, before I established my company, I interviewed CEOs and MDs all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And also, you know, throw in there a couple of prime ministers and some government officials. And
wow.
Yeah, and I think I haven't shared this with you before, and it was really exciting.
You're a well-kept secret.
Yeah, really exciting time. You know, I remember, you know, rocking up to interview Jose Aznar, Prime Minister of Spain, and you know, we had an interpreter, and what an experience that was. And then also, you know, I also interviewed Matef Abeid, who was you know, then in leadership in Egypt, which was a completely different experience. And maybe this is the connection between us. Maybe that's actually what it is that actually during that period, I also, you know, ultimately I am, you know, a therapist, a practitioner in my heart, and a teacher. And I would always sit in these interviews and I would be concerned about their well-being, you know, and I would actually be wondering, I wonder if they're okay. They're carrying a lot on their shoulders. You know, there's an awful lot going on. So when now we're living in a world where working from home is the norm, or it has been, and now we are slowly coming out. So has that affected the issues you've dealt with as a coach, as a speaker, with your clients, with the CEOs that you are supporting?
Yes, is the answer. I don't know when I'm going to be doing any live speaking again, who knows? So most of what I've been doing for the last year is just one-to-one coaching with people. But yeah, I was having a conversation with a COO that I've been working with for about 18 months now. And, he said the other day, he said, that this last year has really kind of leveled people, when you're working from home and you can see your kids running around in the background, or your living room or whatever, suddenly it becomes more of an equalizer. So kind of position matters less and shared humanity matters more. So I was very struck by him saying that, because I've always believed that myself, but it was lovely to hear him say that, when I'm talking to people and I can see what's going on in the background of their home, it makes us more human. So yeah, I think there's, part of what I'm passionate about is moving away from, demanding respect because of position to automatically kind of gaining respect because of humanity, if you like. That's the kind of leadership that I'm passionate about, is don't follow me because of my position, follow me because I'm a real human being that has something to offer you. So I see this great leveling going on, and and I'm passionate. I don't know if we're going to talk about it more in a minute, but I think I'm part of kind of birthing a new way of leading, if you like. And I'm not the only one. There's thousands of us, millions of us doing it. But I'm very passionate about, moving away from the whole command and control kind of idea of leadership. Is like, do as I say because I'm the boss and because I've got a job title, to, leaders who are really fascinated and curious about how they draw the best out of themselves and the people around them. I've had a few experiences in the last year that really opened me up to that, and that's what I'm passionate about, is leadership where people want to be their best selves as human beings and draw the best out of the people around them.
And just on that, now how I relate to, I do consult for a few corporate organizations and help them with their development on the creative aspect. So I have been involved as a consultant at that level, with some global organizations, and it's a tough call, Nick. It is a tough call. It takes a certain mindset to sort of move away from the spreadsheets and the margins, into a space of how can we better serve, how can we work, have the energy flowing through the organization that's not just taking care of us as employees and a business and our profit, but also, the extension of that is how do we also be part of creating a better world. And I also see in health, we also put, and rightly so, if they are delivering, but we put certain individuals in health on pedestals as well. It's the culture, it's the way that we're brought up, and what that ends up doing is actually taking our authority away from ourselves, rather than thinking, oh, I've got a headache, maybe I won't take that paracetamol, I'll actually learn a few things myself, maybe and have a look at what I can do myself. It's this automatic sort of pedestal. We see it in film. Sure. We see it in TV. Many are sitting there, watching their favorite programs night in, night out, and the host or the actor or that individual becomes is their guru, as it were, and I agree, there is a shift taking place. I'm also part of that, wanting to be part of that. So what do we do? How do we gain back authority ourselves? How do we, and certainly from your perspective, how do you help the CEOs that you work with understand that?
Sure. Well, perhaps I can give you an example, because there's one particular woman who I have been kind of deeply influenced by in the last few years. And, because I think, like a lot of people, I've had a lot of ideas in my head going, well, they're great ideas, but I'm not sure how well they work in the real world. And I'm always fascinated by people that take the ideas that inspire me and make them work in the real world as well. So I'll just abbreviate the story, but probably about 13 years ago, I coached a woman who was a TV producer, and we just had a couple of conversations, but became mates. And you know, she was at a tricky point in her life, and then I didn't see her for a couple of years, and then I got back in touch with her, and turns out she'd become one of the executive producers of Downton Abbey. So we reconnected, and she invited me on set when they were filming the 4th series back in about 2013. And it was just lovely to reconnect with her again. But what happened was we ended up rekindling our friendship and having conversations that we recorded. And you know, and for a lot of people in the arts world, probably as opposed to the business world, this probably isn't new, but to me it was new. And you know, I talked about her leadership style. I asked her about it, and she said, look, I know that my job as a leader is to draw the best out of everybody on the set, whether they're in front of the camera or behind the camera. I can't demand that they give their best performance. I can't, you know, we can reward them for giving their best performance. But she said, my job as the producer is to create a safe enough space that people feel capable and safe to give their best. And if they make a mistake, or if they get something wrong, they're not going to get shamed. They're not going to get criticized. They're going to be supported to do it again and access that brilliant performance that's within them. And she even said, I assume brilliant performances are in people. My job is to create the environment for that brilliant performance to come out. And then she talked to me about things like, you know, I know everybody comes onto set feeling a bit vulnerable. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to give their best, or they're afraid they're going to be shown up, or something's going to go wrong. I just thought, how many workplaces do the leaders go, I know my people rock up here feeling a bit afraid and a bit vulnerable. My job is to make it safe. You know, most people actually use the fear to try and motivate people rather than try and allay the fear. And she even talked to me about little details, like they would work out which taxi driver would be the best to bring each actor in, so that each actor would appear on set in the best possible frame of mind, so they hadn't got wound up by some chatty taxi driver. I just thought, wow, what an incredible way of leading, that everything is geared towards helping people be their best. But then I think, well, you know, Downton Abbey, the 6th series, the film, they're making another film as far as I know, it's been a global phenomenon. This, excuse my language, this shit works. You know?
Yeah, no,
it's not just a nice idea, it really works.
I agree. And it has,
so that's the kind of transition that I'm interested in helping people create, is how do we move from this command control to helping people be in their power, find their best performances, bring them out in whatever workplace we happen to work in. But I think, as you kind of alluded to, a lot of managers and leaders think their job is to be in control, rather than to be an enabler of other people. And that's the shift. Is like, you may be the boss, but your job is to draw the best out of the people around you, not to order them around. That isn't going to work so much in the future.
Yeah.
It's a kind of longish answer to your short question, but that's the idea that's inspiring me. And I love working with leaders to help them make that transition. And just to give you another example, you know, the guy I just mentioned, who, you know, was talking about leveling out. He used to be an Olympian, you know, he's been a professional elite athlete. And his initial kind of thing was about using force to make things happen. And during our work together over the last 18 months, I've really helped him move from kind of force to collaboration. And in a way, kind of, instead of wanting to be the hero himself as the leader, to make his team and his clients the heroes and the heroines. And his job is to draw the best out of them. And he is just flying now because he's moved from force to collaboration. And it's just a joy to see the difference that he makes, because he's coming from a different place in himself,
energetically coming from. So there's a couple of things there, you know, I mean, it's you know, absolutely, your mission and your vision is it's ultimately supporting organizations and their leaders holistically, you know, so it's that 360-degree approach where, you know, everything matters. It's you know, and the health of the organization matters, you know, because but also you have an example where the results, you know, the results show themselves. you know, I think unfortunately we're not quite there yet. You know, if we have a look at the majority of you know, of organizations and how they run, so I've got, you know, and just to dig a little bit deeper here, you know, to get more deeper understanding. Why do you think that is? Why do you think more people aren't talking like this, or pointing this out, or even having the confidence to run their organizations, you know, in this way? You know, so, you know, is it a case of emotions? Do they feel they'll be opening up like a whole, you know, like a, you know, or you know, what is it that prevents you know, some organizations moving forward in this way, and then others not? And also the other thing I want to ask you as well, the authenticity, because, you know, I see it also in our own, you know, in my own industry, is there is, you know, marketing. You know, many organizations, you know, say certain things, but, you know, ultimately it's not.
How congruent are they?
It's just for marketing purposes.
Sure.
And you know, so how do we unravel all of that? How does the layperson know the difference?
Well, I think that the kind of foundational base for me that I've come to, you know, I've been on a spiritual kind of path, if you like, for 2 or 3 decades now. And when I discovered something called A Course in Miracles, which you may have heard of, a lot of people haven't heard of, but basically what it teaches is, you know, that there's love and there's fear. So everything either comes from one of those two sources. And the reality is, so much of the world and so much of history has been about fear being played out. So I do think we're now in a phase where, you know, we're kind of going fear, leaders running on fear and running by generating fear has got us here. It's not going to get us where we need to go next, I don't think. So I think there is this kind of collective, if you like, transition and transformation that we're all in collectively, which is how do we move from a more fear-orientated way of looking at the world, looking at ourselves, looking at each other, to becoming, you know, and it sounds, you know, it can sound easy and trite. How do we become more loving? How do we become more understanding? But as you rightly say, you know, that takes a lot of personal reflection. You know, you've had to dig deep inside yourself. I've had to dig very deep inside myself. A lot of people don't want to do that. And I understand that, you know, because often we see things we don't like about ourselves. So for me, it's not just about putting a nice kind of layer on stuff and pretending everything's okay. I've had to dig deep, and I still do dig deep to find the bits of myself I really don't like very much and that I'm ashamed of, and that have been hurt and wounded, and deal with my own pain and deal with my own fear and deal with my own, you know, shadow, if you like, you know. But the more I do that, the more accepting I can be of other people, and the less judgmental I can be of other people. And I think that's one of the keys. And, you know, Liz, who I mentioned, who's one of the Downton producers, you know, she's been on spiritual path herself for 3 decades. And, you know, so she is able to show up on set less judgmental than she ever was. So whatever goes on around her, she understands. And I think one of the things that I've learned, which has really been the difference for me, is to ask the kind of question, which is something like, how must somebody be feeling to be acting that way? Because it's so easy just to judge people's behavior. But I think what great leaders want to do is they understand the emotions that drive people. So instead of just judging people for what they do, they go, how must they be feeling to act like that? Why are they in so much pain? Why are they in so much fear? How can we get beyond the behavior to understand what's driving the behavior a bit more? And I think that's what great leaders do. They have that, because they've been on their own path and they understand themselves a bit more. They have a greater awareness of what's really going on a kind of emotional level of the people around them too. And that doesn't mean they condone what people are doing, but it's like they understand the dynamics a bit more, and they know how to intervene in a more compassionate way to solve problems rather than just judge and squash things. That would be my take. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But, you know, and Nick, I mean, your work is to help unravel that as well. You know, I know this has been your path for many decades now, and And you know, there's two versions of Nick, isn't there? You know, there's prior to stepping onto the path, and there's the Nick we know today. You know, but have you, if say a leader is not ready, does coaching work? You know, or is it the wrong approach?
There are sometimes coaching. I think sometimes coaching is brilliant. Sometimes coaching isn't the thing. The next project I've kind of incubated and developing is around kind of offering guidance to people. And I think when we're offering, when we adopt some kind of role of being a guide, and I think of myself as now somebody who offers kind of guidance, I think we do a number of things. We aim to inspire people. We aim to open their minds to new possibilities. Then I think we're often kind of educators. It's like, well, if you like this idea, here's some ideas about how you can begin to make that happen. But then when the coaching part or the mentoring part comes in, is helping them implement that. So I think sometimes coaching is brilliant. Sometimes it's not the right approach at the right time. You know, if there's a fire, you don't ask people questions about, well, how do you feel the fact that there's a fire in the building at the moment? What are your feelings about it? What do you think your options are? You just kind of go, get out. You know? Sometimes people do need to be directed. Other times they need to be coached. Other times they need to be educated. Other times they need to be inspired. So I think it's understanding that there are right approaches for right situations with the right people at the right time. So it's not an easy quick fix. It's like working out what's the most effective intervention at the right time with the right people.
Yeah. Now this journey of yours, it's been it's been a very precious one, and I can imagine there's been so many stages to it, and illumination and challenges and questioning, and you probably digging deep and going, am I on the right path? And it's the same with me. I've been through it all myself as well. And have those moments where you just want to run back to safety, and also fit in with what the expectations are around you.
I like the idea that sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes it's nice not to know.
Well, it's nice not to know, because I mean, what is life? And what are we feeling? What are we, where is that bliss and that, and that, I'm using the Ayurvedic word, I've been using it in my interviews, but prana, that life force, that energy, how do we connect? But what would Nick, age 13, make of Nick now?
I think he'd be amazed, to be honest. One of the things I talk about a lot is inspiration, and how inspiration, I think, is always nudging us forward in our life. And if somebody had said to the 13-year-old me, you're going to get invited to give talks around the world, you're going to get to work with people in leadership. So far, I've written 18 books. You'll have written 18 books, and you'll just do amazing things, and people want to talk to you and ask your opinion and interview you. I think my 13-year-old had gone, crap, don't be stupid. That's never going to happen to me. So I think there's a fine line sometimes between kind of being deluded and inspired. And I think sometimes what we think, I think there's a part of me at 13 that would have gone, I dream that I could be that man, but I think I'm fooling myself to think I could be. So I think my 13-year-old might have a cry and go, really? I really could be that person? Because I think he dimly believed that he could be, but didn't really believe in that it was just something that was a nice idea but was impossible. So that's something I work with other people, is helping them access their deepest dreams. I have a lovely expression which I like, which is I do believe that everybody is born with a calling etched upon their heart. So I do help people get in touch with that deep dream that they've come to bring something to life, that they have a calling. And I think at 13 I probably would have felt like I did have a calling, but I felt pretty helpless that I'd ever be able to do anything about it.
Yeah. And I think traditionally, I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, but traditionally, again, because of our schooling and our systems, and, in India, we see a class system, Nick, very subtly, I don't see it any different here. it's you know, subliminally that thinking is there in society. So I think it's hard, you know, it's hard for kids, you know, when they're coming through school and they know there's something illuminating inside of them, that they're bigger than, you know, the opportunities that are being presented to them. So what would be your advice, you know, if a 13-year-old was listening to this, what would be your advice to them?
That you have come with a purpose. You know, there is a calling etched upon your heart, and there will be and there are things that you are naturally drawn to. You have a kind of natural intelligence in you, so trust that, listen to it, see what you are drawn to, and find people that can support you in that. And that can be a tough gig, because often teachers, even parents, are trying to funnel us and channel us into different directions. And we want to please people generally. You know, we want to be accepted, as you say. We want to be part of things. So, you know, it can be scary to kind of think, well, this is going to take me off the path. My mates aren't going to like me anymore, or whatever. So have that faith, and that's why I'm a great believer in, you know, this whole idea of kind of guides and mentors. You know, I think, you know, my understanding is that in many other cultures, parents were not the mentors. You know, the job of a mentor was outside the family, to see what that calling might be in a child and to spot it and to nurture it. The parents wouldn't necessarily do that, because the parents had a different responsibility in the child's life. So I'm, you know, part of what I do, I'm part of something called the Mankind Project, and I'm part of the kind of elders of that now. Is like, I think part of the job as elders of any age is to help nurture the talent of the young. So I'm kind of interested to find more opportunities to get these kind of messages out to younger people, because I think that, as you rightly say, they need to hear these kind of messages.
You remind me, I was gifted 2 books recently, and actually I'd like to just read a few words from one. Well, one of them was from, you know, it's very interesting, but he's a speaker in America. I wasn't familiar with him, but my younger sister is, a guy called Trent Shelton, and he's written a book called The Great Issue, and that, you know, that it just resonates, what you're saying sort of resonates with, you know, with the story that he shared there. But I did just, you know, prior to us jumping on this session, I just received a gift from a dear friend of mine through the post. And it's a translation of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's interesting because it came just as we were going to talk. And it's talks between the soul and God. And it's beautifully. I mean, have you read this translation? Have you?
I think my partner may have it. She may have that. It looks familiar. I think there might be one in our household.
Well, I thought, what an opportunity. I thought, let me just have a flick and see what page it opens up on, you know, with the energy of Nick in the room. And it was really interesting because it opened up on page 160. And, you know, this is all about, it's a beautiful section on the Supreme Person. You know, the splendor of the sun illuminating this world and reflected in the light of the moon and the glow of fire is mine. I enter the earth, holding her in space and sustaining all creatures. I become the moon, giving favor and nourishment to all plants. I dwell in all living bodies as the fire of digestion, and with the vital airs digest all kinds of foods. I am seated in everyone's heart. From me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgiveness. All sacred books lead to me, their knower, their creator. Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting, you know, because again, you know, just listening to your thoughts and expressions, you know, and how they're, you know, they're very, again, aligned to helping people, you know, express and find that deep within. So Nick, I know you're a busy man, so just really, just finally, how do you like to start your day? How can we learn from you? Well, we're learning a lot from you, you know, but it'd be nice to know how you start your day.
Early. I think I must have been a monk in other lifetimes, because I always wake, you know, 4 or 5 in the morning. My beginning of every day is I do something which you've probably heard of, but some people probably haven't, called morning pages, where I just journal for 3 A4 pages in a book. Just longhand, just whatever's on my mind, whether I'm angry, pissed off, whether I'm happy, inspired, I just write for 3 pages. you know, and I kind of joke that I can imagine leaving the house without having had a shower. I can't imagine leaving the house without having done my morning pages. So my morning pages are a fundamental of my life. It kind of keeps my psyche, it keeps me going. Then I go for a walk, and then I go and have breakfast, and then I go and write. Now I can go out and write again. Now the restrictions are being eased. So I go out and write every morning. After I've done my morning pages, I then write things that are either for public consumption or coaching notes. So my mornings tend to be very structured, and then the rest of the day is more open to other stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And you do share a lot of content. I watch your videos. I get very inspired by your videos. They always seem to be exactly the right message I need that day.
Yeah, well, I tune into you and I think, what would Sunita want to hear today? And I create the video.
So how can people find you if they want to watch your videos, be inspired by your content?
Great. Well, I'm putting content out every day. So yes, you know, on my website, iamnickwilliams.com is my website, iamnickwilliams.com. The content I put out is mainly on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I am Nick Williams. Connect with me there. I'd love to hear from you. And, you know, one of the ways I describe what I do, and I love what you read from the Bhagavad Gita, is, you know, I go on a journey with people in leadership to help them discover their brilliance. That's one of the ways I describe what they're doing. So if anyone would like to have a conversation, I'd love to have kind of just introductory conversations, even if, you know, we don't go anywhere, but drop me a line, nick@iamnickwilliams.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you, because I think the world needs your brilliance. And if I can help you get it out there a bit more, I'm up for it. Let's talk.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. Thank you.